We're going to start now. Again, my name is Larry Johansson, and I'm your designated facilitator this evening. And so, on behalf of the Community Advisory Council, I want to welcome you all to this, our 4th annual Building Bridges Community Forum. It's very instructive that the title of this event is Building Bridges, because we live at a time when there's talk of building walls. There's acrimony and blame which pollute our social discourse, and truth is increasingly becoming a stranger among us. We also live at a time where people who have been oppressed and discriminated against on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, and religion are finally speaking out, demanding justice and fairness, and the pent-up anger and bitterness can be expressed loudly, harshly, and sometimes uncompromisingly. And so the walls, they can get higher and thicker, driving people further apart. It really is a tribute to the people on the Community Advisory Council that in spite of differences in perspectives and lived experiences, that we're committed to cooperate, collaborate, and agree to continue to build and strengthen the bridges of understanding between the Black community and the Durham Children's Aid Society, where the relationship at one time was characterized by suspicion and defensiveness on both sides. Today what we're doing, we've begun to work and build those bridges, and we're strengthening those bridges, and we're at this meeting here extending the spirit of cooperation and collaboration that we've nurtured and fostered. Now, part of what was on the agenda this evening is that we were going to start off with a libation. We was going to ask the ancestors and the beneficent forces around us to bless the meeting and help us to gain clarity and stability and strength and all of those wonderful things. We don't have it, but we can play it out in our minds, that we can invoke in ourselves that whole spirit of cooperation and collaboration and strength and stability and caring for each other, because this is what this is about and how we've been going through this process. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to introduce the members of the Durham Children's Aid Community Advisory Council. And they're all seated up here, I think. Are we all seated up here? Where's Marilyn over there? And there is, okay. So what I'm gonna do is ask members of the council to briefly stand up and introduce themselves, and what they do and introduce themselves very briefly. All right. Not in any particular order. So we can start anywhere.
Sandy Forsyth,
Yeah.
Radical of the Council.
The radical of the council.
I'm Akila Henry, and I'm one of the one of the founding members of the council, I suppose I could say. And so it's still here.
Leroy Clark, one of the charter members as well.
You're in the lead, co-chair for the event.
I'm Natalie Perryman. I sit on the board of directors for Durham CAF, and I'm also a member of the Community Advisory.
My name is Raphael Francis, and I'm a member of the council also.
Hello everyone, I'm Wanda Secord, I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Aid and a member of the council.
Is that all?
I'm Dawn Walcott Terrace, and I'm the Director of Services at Durham Children's Aid Society. And I'm a member.
Brian, yeah, so there's Brian.
Michelle's coming, so she must be stuck in the back.
Okay, so we have two more members, Brian Woodgate and Michelle Davis, and Blessing Martha. They're on their way. And I am another member of our council. So just to give you some of the meeting guidelines, when we're dealing with a lot of emotional issues, we have to have guidelines that will help us to bring reason to the fore and for us to dialogue with civility and a whole spirit of collaboration. So the guiding principles for this meeting this evening is mutual respect and understanding. That's the basic principle. And we recognize that we're coming from different backgrounds and lived experiences that shape our perspectives on the world. And two things that we're going to look for this evening, or two ways in which we're going to behave this evening. First of all, we're going to listen, and we're going to listen actively, as they say. And my mother used to tell me one time that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we speak. So that's one of the things we're going to do. And we're listening this evening to the presentation and to the questions and all of that. We're listening in order to gain clarity. And in order to do that, we won't have any cross-talks or interruption. We're going to suspend our judgment until the person is finished. And when we're going to speak, we ask questions for clarity before we make statements. All right? Now the speaking part. We agree with all of that yet? Yeah? Okay. So the speaking part. When we're speaking, we're going to speak with honesty and we're going to speak respectfully. And we're going to stay away from the use statements, pointing a finger, and because that's always putting blame or what. So we're going to be talking about more from our own experience, and we will stick with I statements. No generalizations. Every you people, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to leave all those generalizations out. And of course, we're not expecting that there's such a distinguished group of people to have name calling and curse words and swearing, which happens in all kinds of high places. So we don't be part of those rules. Right? The thing is that we're all equally responsible this evening for the success of this meeting. And that's the spirit in which we're going to proceed. Now, I just want to note that a portion of the presentation by the Durham Children's Aid Society staff will be videotaped to put up on the website so that people will have access to it later on. And in the question and answer period, it will be audio taped so that we can gauge the accuracy of it when we're responding. It's going to go up on the site too, is it? It's going to go up on the site too. And we're assuring you and guaranteeing that the privacy of everyone participating will be respected. And maybe even in the shooting of the videos, that as much as possible we shoot from behind which you're doing, from behind people, so that their faces are not necessarily on the video. Okay? So the next thing on our agenda, let me speak to the agenda. What is that? We kind of back up. Sorry. Great. All right, good stuff. So we have done the welcome, and we have done the introduction of the Community Advisory Council. We've done the meeting guidelines, and we're going to now do the overview of the Durham Children's Aid Society referral process. The Durham Children's Aid Society referral process and the complaints process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when that comes up. And then we'll give you some key agency statistics. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the accomplishments of the Community Advisory Council. And then give some of the provincial updates, and then we go into the question and answer period. We probably have a break somewhere. Is there a break somewhere in here? No? Are we just kind of just rolling along? Okay, like we're rolling along then like Old Man River, right? And we'll have our question and answer and then wrap up and some closing remarks. So we're really kind of getting this thing going. So, our next slide. We've done our meeting deadline, so I'm going to ask Raphael to speak to the Community Advisory Council slide that's there.
One of the disadvantages of aging is that you start losing part of yourself. So my eyes are not what they used to be. I asked Elkanah Clark to help me out, and he brought this to me. And it still isn't sufficient for me to read it, so I have to stand in front of you here. The mandate of the Community Advisory Council is that the purpose of the council is to provide a collaborative and transparent forum to raise and discuss systemic issues relating to child welfare in Durham Region's Black and/or oppressed communities, and to make suggestions and recommendations to the attention of the society. As you have already been introduced to the members, the committee is made up of 13 people, 7 from the community, 3 from Durham Children's Aid Society, and another 3 from the Durham Children's Aid Society Board of Directors. And we serve in an advisory and consultative capacity, making recommendations to improve the service experience of children, youth, and families. We also help to identify challenges and opportunities around systemic issues, including racism. And we also try to advance community engagement. That's why we're here. Thanks.
Thanks. Great. So, what we're going to do now is that we're going to invite the staff of the Durham Children's Aid Society to talk about give us an overview of the Durham CAS referral process and the Durham CAS complaints process. Now, just to preface this, these are very, very complex processes, and they span legislative guidelines and organizational procedures that in and of themselves, we could probably come here and spend a whole day in a seminar just on these 2 issues. So what we did is that we asked the staff to really give us a very high-level overview of it. So we're just going to focus on some of the main, some of the key points, some of the salient points, and we're limiting also the presentation to 20 minutes. So most of the presentation is going to be a summary of the major points. You have a copy of the presentation, so you will have an opportunity to take it away and to read it a little bit more closely. And the presentation is also going to be posted on the Durham Children's Aid Society website. For the purposes of this meeting, what I encourage you to do is to listen and take notes and ask questions during the question and answer period. We're gonna, if we've decided that if we break this up too much, then if we can get off, we get off in the weeds and all of that. So what we'd like to do is just to kind of get it done, and then we will have a good amount of time for us to ask questions and get them answered. Do we have a timekeeper here? We'd ask, okay, great. So,
Your one is at 2 minutes and one is
okay, all right. So what is it again? Because I'm suggesting, here's what I'm suggesting. Here's what I'm suggesting for the timekeeper, to inform the presenter when they're 10 minutes in, so that they know there are 2 presentations, right?
Yeah.
So if you're having 20 minutes, I'm figuring that 10 minutes in, you know that you're halfway there. And so the next, you need to kind of transition into the next presentation, okay? So timekeeper, 10 minutes in. Okay, and yeah, all right.
Who's keeping time?
Who's keeping time? She's the government is keeping time, isn't she? Or is it you? Okay. So I think we have a traffic system here. How is this traffic system? We've got a traffic system. Okay. All right. Okay. So what is the traffic system then?
Green is go, red is when
Yes,
it's
okay.
red is stop.
So I'm suggesting that at 10 minutes,
And I'll put up this next 10 minutes.
and when it's 10 minutes, beautiful, okay? Then we transition into the next presentation.
And then this is 2 minutes.
Okay, but I'm figuring,
Get done.
yeah, okay. So we get 2 minutes, and then when she puts up that red one, we're in collusion. You like that word? We're in collusion, and we're going to cut off the presentation. Or, yes, and the time is up. It's for me. Time is up. Okay, so we invite okay. So, and I.
On your mark. Get set. Go. All righty. So I'm here to give you a really high-level overview of some processes that we have at Children's Aid Society. The community members probably encounter these and wonder, what's going on, what's next? And so the hope is to add a little bit of clarity here today. You have the slides. I'm not going to touch on every one of them. So I invite you to read through and to have a good look for yourself. The first thing we're going to talk about is the intake process. What is that? And how does it work? Well, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the process for intakes at Children's Aid Societies across the province are driven by standards that are set by our ministry. The Ministry of Child, Youth, and Family Services set standards, and the most recent standards were developed in 2016. Over the standards is a set of regulations, and those tie into the legal framework or the act. So everything is quite organized and really quite specific on what has to be done, what doesn't have to be done, when it has to be done. I just want to bring that to your attention. The framework for child welfare is set out in the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act. That act was proclaimed on April 30th this year. Prior to that, we had the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act, and that has been around since the 1980s. But this is a new act, and it has some very distinct differences to the old one. I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of those. First of all, the new act goes up to the age of 18. So children up to the age of 18 can still receive services from the Children's Aid Society. It used to be 16 on the 29th, very close to 16, and on the 30th, very close to 18. When we look at some of the other purposes that are in that, it lays out some of the differences and some of the areas that the province really wants us to consider when we think about child welfare. So it talks about mutual consent. The province wants children, youth, and families, and children's aid societies to work together on a basis of consent. It's also desirable that services are the least disruptive, meaning that you start from the most simple solution and work your way on as necessary. Then it talks about continuity of care, stable family relationships. It speaks very specifically to physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, developmental needs and differences. It speaks about race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship. These are all new adds to the act. They weren't there before. But what it's saying is that In order for child welfare to be effective, we must look at these things. And you'll see, it goes on, it speaks about a young person's cultural and linguistic needs, it talks about assessments, decision-making, as being an early process as opposed to one that drags on and on. And it includes the participation of the child or young person's family and community, parents, relatives. So, for many of us, that's not out of the ordinary. We live in family systems, and now the idea is to have the family systems involved in child welfare. It also speaks very specifically to the rights and needs of Indigenous peoples in. Okay. The definition of a child in need of protection hasn't changed. It's physical, sexual, emotional harm, and risk of those things. So the other thing I want to draw your attention to is why. Why do people call children? Well, the intent is where there is suspicion that a child is at risk of harm, just a suspicion, not a proof. Children's Aid is to be called, and it's Children's Aid's responsibility to determine whether that suspicion was valid or not. The legal obligation under the Act is that there are certain people in the community that have a heightened responsibility to make those calls. And they're largely people who work with children. So you will see that there's a list of people who have a heightened responsibility and who face penalties if they don't report. So we see in there healthcare professionals, teachers, principals, social workers, counselors, youth workers, and so on and so forth. So the list is there for you. And the idea is that if someone becomes aware that a child is at risk, then they have an obligation to get some help for that child. So what happens when a call is made? Whoops. There. The referral comes in, we get a call. Our intake reception team at Durham Children's Aid, that's what they do every day. And they receive the information, they assess that information. Does it sound like it really is a possible concern about a child? They have to make the decision up front as to whether this is something that needs further exploration, whether it's something that can be documented and left alone, whether it's something that a call to the family and a conversation on the telephone will suffice. So they make that decision. Depending on the severity, they will then, let's say, rank or rate the information according to the provincial standards. And from that, they're going to make decisions. Now, there's a couple of other steps that happen in between. One is the provincial record check, because once you're involved with Children's Aid Society, there is a database that gathers the information so that families who are involved, as they move around, that information is available. And in listening to concerns about a family, we also have an obligation to listen and probe for the good things. What's working well in the family, who the supports are in the family, when have things looked good, and when have things perhaps arisen that were of concern. Once we have made that determination, then we have to act on it. Check. Where am I? Where am I in time?
Well, only the 22nd through the first 10 minutes.
Okay. There is a flow chart. That's a complicated looking little chart that sort of tracks the questions and answers that we go through all the way through the assessment process. So are there concerns? We need to go out and visit the family. If we visit the family, look what we've spoken to. Once we've spoken to people, what do we believe has happened? And so on and so forth. The end result being, either we think that there are concerns and we need to help the family find resources in the community or through our agency, or we think there are no concerns, in which case we send a letter and we say, we tell everybody that there are no concerns. Some of the steps, there has to be contact with the child. Standards say so. There has to be contact, interviews with other children who live in the home and with the parents who are taking care of the child. We also have to see the home. We have to interview the person who is alleged to have harmed the child and see the parents and children together. If there are witnesses, they have to be spoken to hear what their perspectives, and we need to gather evidence from other professionals. I'm going to flip through some of these. Once we come to the end of that process, as I said, we have 45, I'm not sure what's happening. 45 days to come to the end of that process. In exceptional circumstances, 60 days to come to the end. After 10 minutes?
After 10 minutes.
Okay. So there's notification. And we have to document. So if you just look at the activity, you'll see this triangle. It shows that in the year 16-17, we had about just over 8,000 calls. 4,000 of those resulted in us actually going out and making face-to-face contact with the family to determine what was happening and whether the child was safe. 700 of those resulted in continued involvement with the Children's Aid Society, and 173 children out of the 4,000 that started actually had to leave the home of their family and perhaps reside with someone. You see in your case, there is a list of protocols, and there's also an identification of our accountability. All of the places where we have to answer for the actions that are taken. So, that is the overall referral and investigation process. The other process that's really important to talk about is the complaints process. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is certainly the public accountability, but the other one is that we know that if something isn't working, we need to have channels to be able to hear that. We need to be able to understand where concerns lie and deal with those. In One Vision, One Voice, one of the recommendations speaks very clearly to the need for accessible complaints processes and evaluation of complaints processes so that we know all the time whether or not, A, we're meeting the mark, whether we feel that our services are just, whether we're doing a good job, are we listening and hearing everyone, are we making mistakes, are there factors that are being overlooked. We need to have an opportunity to examine all of that. So one of the things that the council did was a review of the complaints process, because first of all, you have to know that it's there and that it's available to you. Then you have to know how to get through it, because it's complicated as well. It's set out in the regulations as to what a complaint process is supposed to look like. There are two separate processes. There's the internal one, which is escalating. So you start with speaking to your worker and potentially the worker supervisor. You can speak with the director. You can submit a written complaint to the director. And then there's the internal complaint panel, which involves our board. Our board is also very concerned about the accessibility and effectiveness of our complaints process. Apart from the internal process, we have an external process. This is set up by the ministry. So apart from the Children's Aid, Durham Children's Aid or any other Children's Aid, you can go to the Child and Family Services Review Board. And that's a process that's designed by the ministry and is overseen by the ministry. The Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth has a complaint process as well. You can complain to the Provincial Advocate about what's happened at a Children's Aid Society. In doing so, there are certain steps that have to be exhausted firsthand, but that's a conversation that we have with them. Then there are other complaint processes for foster parents, for adoption, and for children who are in care. All of those are established. So you'll see that there are 2 complaint brochures, and there is also our website where you can submit. Okay, that, and that. For the Child and Family Service Review process, it takes place a little differently than an internal process. This one has hearings, not quite like a court hearing, but a more formal setup. Okay? And there are very specific time frames. Decisions are legally binding on the society and on the complainant. So if there is something that is supposed to happen, then it must. Sometimes people disagree with information that they may find in their file, because we do have to document what happens. And there is a process for filing a notice of disagreement. So it's important to know that if there's something in there that you don't like, you can file a notice of disagreement, and there's a process for that to be added to the society's file. Provincial Advocate. All of these details are in your package. And I'll stop there. And I think I'm within time.
All right.
Thanks very much. I just want to share with you some key statistics for the agency. And I just want to start by saying one of the key reasons that we started with the Building Bridges and then further the Community Advisory Council is the issue of disproportionality and overrepresentation of Black children, youth, and families in our system and other institutions as well. So when this was one of the key things that brought us together. So our first Building Bridges forum was in November of 2015, and we did share our statistics at the time. But since that time, there has been new census, and we have new data to share with you. All of this is in the package. So at the time, in November, there were about 13.36, well, there were 13.36 Black children and youth in the care of Durham Children's Aid Society. That was percentage-wise, that represented 80 young people. Compared to Durham Region, and that was with regards to the 2011 census, that was 9%. So there was disproportionality at that time. And I think this is a very good news story. When we're looking at our stats as of the current day, we are very proportional in our representation of Black children and youth in our care compared to the community as of the 2016 census. You'll see that 11.29%, which represents 49 children or youth, as compared to 11.07 that representative in the community of Durham Region. I should say this is from 0 to 19 years of age. We just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. I think another good piece of information that we've always been very interested in is showing where we are getting our referrals. And these are fairly consistent. We have not been able to break them out for the Black community at this point, but we do have the education sector, law enforcement, parents themselves, and community organizations are our top referral resources. Should note that just over 12% of investigations at intake are involving families with Black children. Another important statistic that we have been able to gather over this past period of time, and certainly since February 5th, 2018, where there was a directive on identity-based data collection that came from the ministry, we are in a much better position to have data and separate our data out by demographic. So you'll see in the chart here, according to the eligibility spectrum, the reasons for referral to the Children's Aid Society of all children referred, and Black children being referred to the families. So this is relatively new data to us, but it's also very important because data can help us focus our attention on service delivery improvement. So I just wanted to share that with you. Some other key stats. About 10% of intake files as of May 21st, is a snapshot in time, involve Black children and youth. At family service or ongoing service, which is a further involvement after intake, 11.5%. 55 Black children and youth ages 0 to 21. Well, you'll say, well, you gave us another stat. That was 0 to 19 so that we could compare against the region. But in fact, we do serve children from 0 to 21. So I just wanted to explain that difference, and around 11%. So being quite proportional as represented in the community. And finally, our caregivers, our foster caregivers, and really called 21% are Black or Black mixed families. So just wanted to provide you that update.
Thank you.
So over to
We're going to go to the members of the Community Advisory Council, and we're going to talk about the accomplishments of the Community Advisory Council, and I think Natalie is one of them, and Natalie and Marilyn.
So there have been all 8 meetings since we last had the building bridges. And we have listened to the comments and the questions that we received at prior building bridges sessions, as well as comments that we sometimes get through email and other sources. And we have worked on a number of different areas. A lot of the questions and comments that we received in the past were around the manager of anti-oppressive practice, diversity and equity position. This position is a position that has resided in CAS for approximately about 5 years. And this person was responsible for basically leading the charge on instilling diversity and equity practices within the society. Since that time, the committee has advocated for changing the reporting relationship. Previously, the person reported to the director of HR. The person now reports to the executive director, Wanda, or the position now reports to the executive director, Wanda. And we have consulted on a new job description and recruitment strategy, recommended places for the position to be advertised. Currently, the position is vacant, but the society is in the process of trying to fill it. We have also reviewed the referral and complaints process with the society. We received presentations just like the one that Dawn just gave, but in more depth. And we held very heated discussions on what are the problems within these processes. So we have identified some areas for further clarification and discussion and exploration. Out of this, we have examined in particular the issue of trite reporting. So trite reporting, which I will attribute to Akila Hanif Jabari, it is one of the key reasons that is overrepresentation within your CAS for Black children. Basically, it's reporting children and families for insignificant reasons in a nutshell. So what we're trying to do is probably a more defined definition of what exactly trade reporting will encompass. And we're still working on that. It takes a little time to really discuss it and figure out what exactly should be included or what should be. So we, in addition to discussing trade reporting and the definition, we will continue to look at some of the other issues that we identified in the referrals and the complaints process to see if we can come up with solutions to make things better.
Just to elaborate a little bit on the trade reporting, I think it's the goal of this group to actually develop a strategy to be able to go to the community and indicate what we've defined trade reporting as and how it is harmful and how we can prevent it. So I think that's the long-term goal of some of the work. So we've also, in the early stages of developing a directory of Black service providers, and these are individuals that have either specifically designated that they've worked with individuals of African American descent, or that part of their practice also encompasses working with specific cultural issues that we have in the community. As I said, we're in the early stages of that, and the hope is for that list to expand and grow, and particularly from a shared services perspective, also to look at what resources other CASs have and see if any of them can be used for any of the families here in the Durham region as well. And we also had a lot of other presentations by CAS staff that just gave us more in-depth understanding of how Durham CAS is run. One in particular was we looked at the Soul Journey. This is basically a program in collaboration with other CASs, in Toronto CAS. And they take young Black youth on a trip for a week. But it's it's preceded by a week of in-class training and studying the country that they're visiting. So last year they went to Jamaica, so they had 1 week of in-class learning about the history and the culture in Jamaica, and then they spent 1 week in Jamaica, and I believe all of the kids really enjoyed the experience. Some of the ways to connect youth who would not have been connected otherwise with that type of experience. So that's all I'll say about that.
Great. All right, so we're gonna have get some provincial updates from Akila. She gives us a different perspective, a provincial perspective on some of the issues impacting.
All right, so provincially, I'm going to talk about two different groups. One is the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies is responsible for the government's not government maybe, but they oversee the 46 children's aid societies across the province. 46. So yes, it's an umbrella. What he did was, in response to the fact that there's disproportionate representation of Black children in care across Ontario, they developed a program called, an initiative called One Vision, One Voice. And One Vision, One Voice was something that maybe some people in the room participated in. And they came across 15 different communities across the province and had community consultation sessions asking people for input on their experiences with Children's Aid Society, racism, Black children in care, and what are some of the recommendations that the community had for the problem that was at hand. Is there anybody here by show of hands who attended one of those sessions? There was one at Pickering High, So we have a few. All right, out of that, out of the One Vision, One Voice, 15 community consultations, they came up with 11 race equity frameworks. I'm going to tell you what the 11 are. One is to commit to courageous leadership. The second one is to collect and analyze data. And I'm going to link that now with the Anti-Racism Directorate, which has developed a data standard. And I know that the Children's Aid Societies are already collecting data, analyzing data. The other thing that they're supposed to be reporting on is data. So evaluate programs and monitor performance is number 3. Allocate appropriate and dedicated resources, number 4. Number 5 is engage African Canadian parents and communities like this. This is a community engagement session, a parent engagement session as well. Number 6 is to engage and educate mandated referrers, which is what Natalie was just referring to when she talked about how it's important to educate people who are doing the referrals so that we can decrease the incidence of trite reporting. And number 7, to establish effective internal complaints mechanisms, another topic that we touched on today. Number 8, to enhance human resource management. Number 9, to provide daily supervision, ongoing training and supports with staff, volunteers, and caregivers. 10 is to establish collaborations and partnerships. And 11, to strengthen the ability of caregivers to support African Canadian children and youth. So we are actually considered to be ahead of the curve in Durham by the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. I've met with some of them who are responsible for One Vision, One Voice. They see us as being really on the cutting edge because we are one of the few regions who have a community advisory council. Now they are trying to establish community advisory councils across the province. And they have turned back and looked at us and said, what did you do? What are your terms of reference? What are you guys doing in Durham region? Because you're doing something that's pioneering. Anyway. The other thing I want to talk about is the Anti-Racism Directorate. I work for the Anti-Racism Directorate. I'm a senior community engagement and education advisor with the Anti-Racism Directorate. And we have launched an anti-Black racism strategy. Is anybody here, by show of hands, do you know that we launched an anti-Black racism strategy in the province on December 14th of 2017? Okay. But the anti-Black racism strategy names Children's Aid Society. And this is why I have it here. It names the Children's Aid Society as one of the entities where anti-Black racism has been noted to be a problem in our province. And so there is a provision inside of the anti-Black racism strategy to address the disproportionate representation of Black children in care. And again, we talk about the data standard. We finished the data standard in April of this year, last month, basically. That's last month. And that data standard is going to be rolling out across the province in the future. And the purpose for it is to have a standard. When you have a standard, you can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges across systems, across ministries, across education, to health, to child welfare, to policing, whatever it might be. I want to also mention, in closing, that this is the decade for the advancement of people of African descent. Does anybody know that? Raise your hand if you know that. Okay. This is the United Nations declared decade from 2015 to 2024. And I mention that because the work of the Anti-Racism Directorate's anti-Black racism strategy is couched within that decade. And what we are saying is that by 2024, we are aiming to reduce disproportionality or eradicate disproportionality of negative outcomes for Black people, children included, in our province. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I know that you've been paying a lot of attention, you've been taking a lot of notes, and now we're going to segue into the question and answer session.